Get you a poor boy and go the length of the damn pool, Charlie said. Show off, JR said in a fussy mood. 5:30 a.m. JR and Charlie leave Sibley. They go down the path of the engineering key to their respective dorms in Crockett House. Obviously, Charlie chose the athletic party dorm, Smead Hall. 5:40 a.m. JR is in a study room going through Spanish, getting ready for today's lab. By 9:30 a.m., after breakfast in the dining hall, which was with Brent Clark, a breakfast of cinnamon rolls, he is now in the Spanish lab under the direction of Isidro Sanchez. By 10:45 a.m., he's leaving the foreign language class. JR and Jennifer decided to take a 20-minute walk from around the library to the Memorial Circle to the Crockett House dining hall for lunch. Lunch today for JR was going to be extravaganza pizza. And Jennifer Bowers was to set his mind at ease. Was going to read a verse or two out of her New King James Bible. At 11 a.m., arriving at the Crockett House dining hall, JR hands his card to Mrs. D, the assigned house dining hall supervisor, for breakfast and lunch. He then goes, helped by Bruno Lopez, a Spanish national foreign student who is also a server, to get his extravaganza pizza and root beer. By 1 p.m., JR and Andy Selford are at the entrance fountain studying and chilling. By 1:20 p.m., JR and Andy Selford go to Quick Mart at the Student Union Building. JR gets a Dr. Pepper for himself and for Andy. Ah, man, Andy said. I could have covered that. You're kind to Cousin Joey last summer when he had to repeat business calculus, JR said. It's the least I can do. Besides, man, you paid for my Spanish and my statistics textbooks. I couldn't wait for the state to decide when the fiscal year began. 5 p.m. JR has been reading and studying all afternoon, and now he goes to the Crockett House dining hall to have dinner with his good friends Dave Smith and Brent Clark. JR still has the public speaking class at 6 tonight with John McComb. You know, I really don't pity you, Brent said. I really hate that man for forcing Professor Burning out last semester. At 6 a.m., JR walks into Mass Comm 101 the auditorium-style lecture hall. His first time to ever be in that particular classroom. Welcome to Public Speaking. I'm Professor John McComb. You know, a lot of people consider this requirement a dreaded class. But I think it can be interesting and a lot of fun. Public speaking, communications is required, or should be required, in almost every field of study. McCone said. He was a man in his late 40s, thinning brown hair and bifocals. He had a George McGovern lapel on his suit. Despite Brent's feelings toward the professor, JR was already starting to like him, even though administration was threatening to fire him for in 2 years. 6:55 p.m. JR walks out of his public speaking class when Dave Smith stopped him. "Hold it, JR," Dave said, running to him. "Look, Newcastle just reminds me. I'd like to invite you to the Scripted Club. It's on University, a couple of blocks to the north of University Loft Apartments. I'll give directions to your chauffeur, Mary Jo." "Sure thing. Breakfast at 7. At 7. Breakfast is at 6. I'll get Mary Jo to pick me up at the Sibley. I got swimming practice tomorrow with Charlie at 5. Come on, let's go to the library. I'll help you with some of those measures of central tendencies homework, since Brad is too snobby to help." By 7 p.m. at the library, JR turns in his ID to the circulation desk to get a key to the Center for the Visually Impaired, where Dave Smith works with him on statistics. By 8:40 a.m., JR arrived back at his dorm room at Gordon Hall after going through statistics for about a little over 3 minutes. He had a talk with his father, who showed up on campus to talk to him about a summer 1994 fellowship internship program with the Heritage Foundation. JR said that he was very enthusiastic about it. Jim informed him that interviews would start in November and the applications were due by February. Now we go to August 25th. 12:50 a.m. JR is in the suite living room where his buddy Kevin McDonald woke him up. "JR, get up! JR, get up!" Kevin said. "What?" "You fell asleep in your chair bed," Kevin said. "I'm afraid you'll throw your back out of alignment. You want to go to the swimming practice this morning? Get up and go to the bed." "Okay." I get that. It's been my first night course in 2 years. And Daddy tires me out sometimes. Keeping up with him. Just get in your bed. By 2:40 a.m. in his condo in Lubbock, Jim can't sleep. His wife is sleeping with a cable TV. So he goes into the living room. So he takes out his Dell laptop to read the New York Post. He chooses not to read page 6 because he left that for Betsy and Elizabeth. JR read it for a while until he went off to Texas Tech in 1992. The last tabloid JR read was in June 1995 when he got a copy of the National Enquirer, to the consternation of Brad. Meanwhile, in Odessa, Ken can't sleep either. So he wakes up and reaches for his bottle of water. 6 glasses from the past 2 days. Whoa. He looks at the choices. The red Hummer he's gotten himself for his birthday in 1992. Or the 4-wheeler his stepfather gave him upon returning. He gets the keys of the 4-wheeler out of his pocket and gets on board. Living in paradise, Ken said, starting the 4-wheeler and rolling away. 2:50 a.m. JR goes downstairs to the empty living room. Only one couch potato is sleeping on the sofa. Charlie Nation. No One Else on Earth by Winona Judd was playing in the lobby. 3:25 a.m. JR decides to step out of the dorm for some fresh air. Earlier he had read an email on his laptop inviting him to a lunch at the Tech Christian Coalition at the Scripted Club for lunch. Lunch today would be sloppy joes, potato chips, ginger ale, and Nutri-Grain bars for dessert. He decides to sit at the Sneed Hall patio to quietly study statistics. By 4:20 p.m., JR is involved in some personal study. By personal study, he means personal development books and daily devotionals. Ken McDonald wakes up to take a run out to the rec center. He wants to do a morning run. He's going for the first golf tournament this Saturday against the University of Nebraska. JR would also be at a